Who says the ancient epics have no relevance to our contemporary lives? I'll be retelling an episode from the Hindu epic, the Ramayana. This is a tale that has been told since rivers have run, since mountains have stood. It was compiled around 200 BCE to about 200 AD, give or take a century or two. The Princess Sita was walking through her garden one fine morning. Dozens of birds in a rainbow of shades were perched upon graceful branches laden with heavy jackfruit, sweet mango, ripe persimmon. The Princess Sita picked a bright pink firecracker flower and placed it in her hair. She had a smile on her face, for today was the day of our Swayamvara. The Swayamvara was an ancient ritual in which princes from all across the land would compete in feats of strength to win the hand of a princess. Sita smiled. She looked at the clouds swaying in the sky, at the beautiful garlands of flowers and trees all about her. And she knew that there was no separation between her and the earth. They were one, as close as a word and its meaning. And yet a husband would add another layer of joy, that was all. King Janaka, her father, had told her that he found her as a baby one day upon the earth. He'd been plowing sacrificial ground, and suddenly he heard some gurglings and laughing, and he turned, and there was a little baby upon the earth, a little girl. He considered the little baby a gift from the earth and took her home as his own. That is why King Janaka had placed a high bride price upon his daughter. Not any ordinary prince, not worth his title, would win his daughter's hand. It would be a man who could lift and string the great bow of Shiva. Shiva was the creator and the destroyer of the universe. Thus, the bow was fraught with all the cares of the universe. Sita in her garden looked all around her, and she smiled once more, for she had seen her intended the day before. She'd been in her garden and seen chariots, one after the other, lining up in front of her father's palace. One by one, princes more handsome than the next all descended from the chariots. But one man caught her eye. Not only was he tall and muscular, his skin shimmered like a sky at twilight. And by chance, Sita caught his glance. And when she looked into his eyes, she knew he was the man for her. She would wait to see, of course, what would happen this afternoon. The Swayamvara took place in the richly adorned hall of the palace. One by one, princes entered the room. When her intended entered, it was as if a sun of lapis lazuli shed its rays throughout the room. One by one, the princes tried to lift the bow. They couldn't even budge it. It was comical watching their attempts. But when her intended came, he lifted the bow, he strung it, and he broke it for added effect. Well, people in the room stood up and shouted in joy. This was the man who had won the Princess Sita's hand. This was Prince Rama of the ancient walled city of Ayodhya. King Janaka was overjoyed. His daughter was marrying the crown prince of Ayodhya. And indeed, the next day, Sita's sister Urmila married Rama's brother Lakshmana, while Sita married Rama. King Janaka thought to himself, can my life get any happier? My daughters are marrying fine princes, and my eldest daughter is marrying the crown prince of Ayodhya. Life was too good. The two couples left for Ayodhya and got to know one another. Rama doted on Sita, and Sita adored Rama, for he had a strong sense of justice and duty. He wouldn't let petty emotions like anger or jealousy influence him. He knew he would be king, and first and foremost in his mind was wanting to be dutiful and good to his people. And indeed, one day, the news spread through the town that Rama's father, King Dasharatha, had decided to step down from the throne. Rama would be king. So imagine Sita's surprise when one day he entered her apartments and he told her, "There has been a change in plans. I need to listen to my father, and he wants me to go into the forest for 14 years. Sita looked at him dumbstruck. "What are you saying, Rama?" Rama said, "Yes, this is something I must do. It is my destiny, but my brother Bharata will rule while I'm gone. When I return, I'll be king. You don't worry. You'll stay in the comforts of this palace. You'll have servants. Nothing to worry about." Sita said, "Are you crazy, Rama? We are married. Our destinies are one. I am coming with you. And remember, I am not scared of a forest." Rama said, "There are going to be wild animals in the forest, poisonous plants." And Sita replied, "Rama, I told you I am a daughter of the earth. There is nothing closer to me than the earth. I have no fear of any forest. I'm coming with you." So Rama and Sita and Rama's brother Lakshmana left for the forest in a few days. Lakshmana told his wife Urmila that she could not accompany him. Urmila insisted as well, but Lakshmana absolutely would not have it. He was going to look after his brother for the entire journey of 14 years. He wouldn't have time for her. As Rama and Sita and Lakshmana left for the forest, they took off their royal clothes and put on clothes of cotton. Sita stripped off her royal silken sari and wore garments of scratchy bark and leaves. They left for the forest. The first night, Lakshmana stayed wide awake as he was watching over his brother. The goddess of sleep came to him. She asked him, "Are you not sleeping?" Lakshmana said, "Nope." And the goddess of sleep asked, "You can't do that." And he said, "Why not?" He said, "I made a vow that I'm not going to sleep for 14 years, the duration of my brother's exile." And the goddess of sleep said, "If you don't sleep for 14 years, someone must sleep in your stead." Lakshmana said, "Well, ask my wife if she will do that for me." And this is how the Princess Urmila, who had been destined for the comforts of a royal life, spent 14 years of her life asleep. One day, Sita spied a deer in the forest. It was golden and shimmered like the sun. "Rama, Lakshmana," she said, "please go get that deer for me." Lakshmana had his doubts. That is not a normal deer. There's something strange about that. But Sita insisted, "Please go get him. He's beautiful." Rama said, "I'll go get him." Rama went into a thicket of oaks and banyan. Deep in the thicket, he saw the deer, but then he realized it was a demon in disguise. Rama shot his arrow, and the arrow pierced the demon's side, and as he died, he cried out in Rama's voice, "Sita!" Well, Sita heard Rama's voice calling for her. She said, "Lakshmana, go get Rama. Something's happened." But Lakshmana still had doubts. And Sita insisted, and Lakshmana said, "All right, I'll go get him." But he took a stick and he drew a circle around Sita. He said, "Don't leave this circle. Within this circle, you're protected. If you step outside, you'll be in danger." Sita said, "Okay." Lakshmana left for the forest. A few minutes later, a holy man appeared in the forest. Well, Sita had never refused a holy man. She stepped into her hut, picked a silver coin, stepped out of the hut, out of the circle, gave it to the holy man, and he took her and swept her off into the skies. Then Sita realized the holy man was a demon in disguise. He was Ravana, the 10-headed demon king. He took her across the seas to his island kingdom of Lanka. When Rama and Lakshmana returned from the forest, instead of finding Sita outside the hut, they found a wounded vulture. The vulture told them everything that happened. He said, "I tried my best to fight Ravana, but Ravana has wounded me fatally. I know I will leave this earth, but I thank God that I'm able to tell you what happened to Sita." Well, when Rama heard this news, he collapsed in grief. Across the seas, Sita was in a garden of Ashoka trees. These were the trees whose beautiful white flowers removed all sorrow. But they couldn't remove Sita's sorrow. She was distraught at being taken from Rama. Ravana wanted Sita to be with him, but she would not go. Ravana was quite attractive. He was very powerful. He was wealthy. He was charming in his own way. But Sita's mind only stayed on Rama. He was her life. Back in the forest, the birds in the trees chatted with one another, wondering, who is this man who has collapsed in the forest? Is he the crown prince of Ayodhya? But he is in grief, he is in despair. What has happened to him? And this is true, for Rama had collapsed and his head was in his brother's lap, and he said, I cannot live without my beloved Sita. He wept in despair, I cannot live, I cannot go on. Lakshmana gave him strength, and soon enough both brothers gathered an army of monkeys and bears. They found out where Sita was located. They invaded Lanka, they killed Ravana, and Rama rescued Sita. Well, when Sita heard that she was going to be rescued, her joy knew no bounds. She was in a mixture of elation and tears, because she couldn't even believe that she would be rescued after 1 year of captivity. So imagine her surprise when her husband met her in public, in a public square, and he looked at her coldly, and he said, I have killed your captor and I have rescued you. You are free to go where you wish. Sita looked at him and said, Rama, are you crazy? You rescued me, I'm your wife. What are you saying? And Rama said, well, you've been in the home of another man for 1 year, so you are free to go where you wish. Sita said, is that what this is about, Rama? My mind has never wavered from you, nor my heart. But Rama stood still. His face betrayed no expression. In despair, Sita asked her attendants to build a fire. She said, I'm going to walk through fire. And if I have sinned against you in my heart, in my mind, in my body, let Agni, the god of fire, take me away. And everyone watched in awe and wonder and shock at this dignified princess as she entered the fire. She entered the fire and stood, and the flames grew all around her, orange and hot and thick. But they did not even touch Sita. Indeed, they did not even singe her flower garland. Rama was elated. He was overjoyed to have Sita back, and he told her, I had to do this publicly because people have been gossiping that you have been with Ravana. Sita was irritated, annoyed, angry, but wanted to put everything behind her. Some years later, Sita got pregnant. Once more there was gossip in the town, because weak-minded people like to gossip, and gossip flourishes when people can't stop talking. And Rama banished his wife into the forest. A sage found her, took her to his ashram, and Sita gave birth and raised 2 sons, a single mother in a world where a woman on her own was a pariah. Years passed. King Rama had a great ceremony. The brothers had grown up. Sita's twin children, they had grown up, and they went to sing at this great ceremony. Rama saw these sons. They looked just like him. He knew they were his, and he asked Sita to come to him. The sage accompanied Sita to see Rama, and the sage said, Rama, Sita is so pure, I dare say you do not even deserve her. Well, Rama was overjoyed to have his Sita back. So imagine his surprise when Sita said, Rama, you have spoken of duty. I have done my duty. And I told you there is nothing between me and the earth. I am returning to myself. And as Rama watched, the earth opened up. And Rama leapt from his chair to reach Sita, but Sita stepped inside and the earth took her. Rama made a golden statue of his wife, and he never married again.